Ahoy out there! Thanks for joining me today, here to talk about a movie. In my quest to understand art, I can sometimes enjoy being random with my film selection because I find anything can be enjoyable to me as long as it gives me something to think about. Good or bad, how I receive a film teaches me to know myself. This led me to watching an 8-year-old movie I had never seen before, and that movie was Moana. First off, I don't watch as many animated movies as some people do. I haven't kept up with Disney and or Pixar films as much as I used to. Like many people, I think animated films for kids and families have become very terrible in quality in more ways than one, so I don't watch them too often. But in fairness to all the terrible ones, I can't say I regularly enjoy revisiting the classic good ones. Or at least the allegedly good ones. There are certain films I like to watch once a year, and if I can't, then I at least wish I could watch them once a year, or maybe even 2 or 3 years. And I'm not certain many animated films fall onto that list, if any at all. This had me wondering, what is the exact effect animated films have on me? Maybe it's something I just have to try to get back into. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe Moana can cue me into this question. So Moana is the story of a young girl named Moana, who is part of an islander Polynesian tribe, and she is to be the next chieftain of the tribe. But she wants to explore the ocean and sail beyond the reef, but her sheltering father says, no, it is unsafe. Then the food sources on the island start to rot and vanish. If only Moana can sail beyond the reef to appease an ancient spirit and restore order to nature. And then stuff happens that pushes the story along. Also, there's a demigod character named Maui, who 1,000 years ago stole the heart of the ancient goddess, which comes into play much later. So my quick summary is the beginning had me entertained, if maybe only because it had been so long since I'd watched a computer animated movie like this. The middle section had me being a bit bored, and then the ending was decent enough. And I don't think I have a desire to go back to revisit this again. So why did I feel that way? I'm not sure, but I had some thoughts. It occurred to me when you watch a regular live-action movie, it's hard getting smooth consistency in the overall quality. You have problems like actors not nailing their lines, weather throwing off your shoot, practical effects not working perfectly, subpar cinematography, and all the while you might not be able to go back and reshoot and you have to edit with what you have. And I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a true observation. Animated movies should not have this problem to my knowledge. You're working on computers and you have complete control over the characters. You can take all the time in the world from the comfort of a studio, reworking characters' expressions and animations and reframing the camera angles. And getting voice actors to redo lines is always doable. So animated films cut out a lot of problems that live-action movies can't. But I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a true observation. So with Moana, to my memory, if I was to grade it like it were a live-action movie, I might just declare that the lighting was perfect, the shots were perfect, voice acting was perfect, and it all felt like a living and breathing world I would want to jump into. So why was I a little bored in the middle? And why didn't I love the characters? And why is it I'm thinking I don't need to go back and rewatch this? I'm going to put out a theory, which means it might be wrong, but just hear me out. I think animated films have a way with perfecting what would be the rougher edges of live-action films. The list of things I mentioned before, like bad acting, poor cinematography, and so on, are not a problem with computer animated films, so this should make them better, right? Well, I can't speak on behalf of everyone else, but like I said at the beginning of this review, I don't often revisit animated films, no matter how good they are, or at least not many in the last 30 years or so. Yes, there are some I revisit, but that's a story for another time. My belief is for art to be good, it has to be greater than the sum of its parts. So in this situation, I believe Moana and maybe even most animated films manage to not quite do that. They get the bonus of being able to perfect the problems of live action movies, so they lull me into a hypnotic state of perceiving greatness. But I suspect the reason why I don't often return to these kinds of movies is they are lacking in the writing department. And I wonder if animated movies get too sure of themselves, thinking they have a perfect formula but fail in the writing. They become too quick to say, good enough. I think the bonus of live action movies is you get real people with souls emoting who can ad-lib and play off each other, and maybe even having a messiness to their interactions and conversations. An actor on set can approach the director and suggest an idea for how their character might react in a situation, and the director, if he's good, might allow for the actor's creativity to change the dialogue in a positive way. In the movie Way of the Gun, Benicio del Toro had a gun jam during a shootout, and he had to discharge a jammed shotgun round out of his shotgun in the moment and keep going. Gun jams do happen, and they left it in the movie, and it only made the moment that much more real. So I think the downside of animated movies is you get the gift of being able to perfect so many things except for the writing, so you have to try extra hard with the script writing, or else a hollowness to your film will be exposed, and having people forgetting about it with time. Or maybe I'm completely wrong because everyone else seems to think this movie is perfect. I can't go over all the writing with Moana because that would take many hours of analysis, but I suspect many of my misgivings with this movie came down to what I just described. Oh yeah, I still have to review the movie. I'm going to assume everyone has seen this film, so don't mind me if I go into spoilers. On that note, I just had a sporadic thought. Does anyone actually care about spoilers in an animated movie? If I say a movie's animated, do you think, good heavens, don't spoil it for me, Jay Saki. I want to go in completely blind, not knowing what's going to happen. Does anyone ever think that? Food for thought. Anyways, I'm going to talk about a couple things that I liked. I liked the part where Moana's grandmother dies and her spirit follows after her in the form of a stingray. Stories that have a moment where someone gets a spiritual assistance from a dead friend or relative is something that I enjoy on a personal level. Also, much later in the movie, Moana sees the ghosts of her dead ancestors who came before her to remind her what it is she has to live up to, which hit on the same theme for me as the moment with her grandmother. My brother suggested I review the movie as a kids movie since kids should be the primary focus and not adults. He basically said if millions of kids around the world are being exposed to this film, then would it be appropriate for them? The short answer is it's fine for kids, but it shouldn't be the only movie they're exposed to because although it's fun and adventurous and might give kids an imagination, it subtly has a lot of cheap messages that should be done much better. It had an element of rebelling against the sheltering parent. And to their credit, it was about as well handled as it could have been. It showed how the father was only sheltering because he too was once young and rebellious, and his rebelliousness got his best friend killed. So points for the movie for showing the father's side, but it's still annoying given how overly prevalent this story device has become. It seems to me that in most animated movies in the last 15 years or so, the parents are not guiding forces. They're just foils to get in the way of the child's growth. The movie also emphasized following your passion, which in this case was Moana wanting to be an explorer and sail out beyond the reef. My rewrite for this would be have Moana be scared of the ocean and of sailing, and her father, rather than being a sheltering figure, teaches her that she needs to face her fears and sail beyond the reef to save her people. Emphasize that Moana is scared and out of her league, but she's gotta show courage. That was what made a little movie called Secret of Nim so memorable. Mrs. Brisby was terrified out of her mind that whole movie, but was constantly having to show courage in the face of death. What a great role model that little mouse was. Another problem I had was a scene where Moana falls from an incredibly high height and bounces off some rocks, and she's just fine. I know these characters are animated, but I'd at least like to get the sense these characters are vulnerable and could die. Moments of characters falling and banging off multiple objects only for them to get up and say, "I'm fine," take the tension away. I think it's not a bad thing to give kids' films a sense that death is real. Remind kids that danger is real. I also wanted to comment on this goddess who gets her heart stolen by the demigod Maui, and she becomes dormant, but it takes 1,000 years before food starts to rot and vanish. Why 1,000 years? Also, everything bad that happens is because of the demigod character Maui stealing her heart. But in the end, after the day is saved and the goddess's heart is restored, he basically gets a big old reward and the promise that he'll do better. I'm thinking, shouldn't he be banished to the pits of hell, to be chained down there to burn for all eternity? I think we should start kids at an early age teaching this lesson. If you attempt to steal the heart of God, or goddess in the case of this movie, you will suffer everlasting death. I think even Hitler and Stalin had a better chance at salvation due to human ignorance. Maui is a demigod, which in Judeo-Christian terms means he's equivalent to an angel. And angels, as we all know, have all the knowledge set before them before they make their choices. Therefore, they can't change their decisions. Like I said, you have to teach kids to understand these things when they're small. Otherwise, they grow up thinking they can just steal what they want and get away with it. Disney, Disney, Disney. What are you trying to teach children? I was going to comment on the strange nature of the ocean being a deus ex machina to solve problems, but I don't think it's even worth commenting on at this point, given the depressing nature of what I just said. At the start of my review, I had it on my mind that I would summarize and say it's basically inoffensive and safe for kids, but as I've delved into this, I can't really say that with a straight face. What can I say? Maybe you should instead show the kids something like 101 Dalmatians, maybe The Rescuers, maybe even Sleeping Beauty. If you haven't seen any of those in a long while, then try checking them out again as an alternative to Moana. Especially 101 Dalmatians. That one had me howling with laughter the last time I saw it. That is all, audience. That is all I have. Have a good night.